He wanted revenge. He planned every step carefully, until the moment he started to feel something he never expected. Now the line between love and betrayal is blurring, and one secret could destroy everything. When the truth comes out, will it break them apart, or pull them closer than ever? Like, comment, and subscribe for more dramatic BL stories you won't forget. Kael watched from the shadows, his eyes tracing the effortless confidence in the way Rian laughed across the crowded room. The music throbbed like a pulse in his chest, but Kael's focus never wavered. Every gesture, every flick of Rian's dark hair, every curve of his smile was etched into Kael's mind. He had memorized it all over the past months, rehearsed countless scenarios, and yet, somehow, seeing Rian in person made the old ache in Kael's chest thrum like a living thing. This wasn't admiration. Not really. It was war. Kael had spent years plotting this moment. Revenge wasn't just an impulse, it was a careful, calculated art. And Rian, for all his charm and effortless magnetism, was the perfect target. He was charismatic, popular, untouchable. But Kael knew the cracks beneath that polished exterior, Rian's arrogance, his occasional carelessness, and the tiny habits no one else noticed. That knowledge was Kael's weapon. The memory that had ignited this obsession flickered across Kael's mind like a cruel film. The gallery opening. Rian had been there, laughing with everyone, oblivious to Kael's humiliated attempt to present his work. A careless remark, a snide laugh at Kael's expense, and everything changed. Kael had sworn then, amidst the sting of embarrassment, that one day he would make Rian pay, not with violence, not with exposure, but in the only way that mattered, by breaking the flawless image Rian carried as armor. And now the opportunity had finally arrived. Rian leaned casually against the balcony railing, a champagne glass in hand, talking to a group that hung on his every word. The warm glow of the evening lights painted his sharp features, highlighting the mischievous tilt of his lips. Kael felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected: fascination. He hated that fascination, hated the way his chest tightened at the sight of Rian's confident smile. "Stop staring, Kael. You're practically glowing over there." Kael jumped slightly, startled by the familiar voice. He turned to see Eli, his closest friend and co-conspirator in this delicate game, smirking. Eli had been helping him map out Rian's routines, giving him insights that only someone with patience and cunning could provide. "I'm not glowing," Kael muttered, forcing a casual tone. "I'm observing." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Observing, huh? Careful, that's dangerously close to obsession. Remember why we're here." Kael's jaw tightened. "I remember." "Focus, Eli." He turned his attention back to Rian, who now laughed at something someone had whispered. The sound was light, carefree, and infuriatingly infectious. Kael's pulse quickened, not from fear but from anticipation. Every move, every small laugh, was a note in the symphony of his revenge. It was only a matter of time before Kael would step from the shadows and weave himself into Rian's life. Not as a stranger, not as an enemy, but as someone Rian would never suspect. Someone indispensable. Kael's first step had already been laid out: the gala invitation. A mutual acquaintance had accidentally mentioned Kael's supposed connection to a charitable foundation Rian supported. A little truth, a little fabrication, it didn't matter. The seed had been planted. Rian would notice him tonight, and from that notice, Kael would begin his game. He adjusted his jacket and took a deep breath. Confidence, Kael reminded himself. Confidence is everything. Moments later, he found himself beside Rian, introduced under the guise of mutual philanthropy interest. Kael smiled, the calculated charm effortless on his lips. "Rian," he said, voice smooth, "I've heard so much about your work with the foundation. It's impressive." Rian's eyes, sharp and dark, met his. For a moment, Kael saw a flicker of curiosity, almost amusement. "And you are?" Rian asked, tilting his head, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. "Kael," he replied simply. "Kael Arden." The name seemed to pass over Rian like a soft wind, but Kael felt the tension in that moment, the subtle weighing of him. He could read people, he could see the patterns, the instincts, and in Rian, Kael recognized the tiniest hint of intrigue. "Well, Kael Arden," Rian said finally, extending his hand, "I suppose you'll have to prove your worth tonight." Kael's pulse skipped. Worth. Every word from Rian, every glance, was a tool Kael could use. And yet, beneath the fire of his revenge, a whisper of something else stirred, a dangerous, undeniable pull toward Rian. Kael pushed it aside. "Focus. Revenge first. Everything else could wait." The evening passed with careful choreography. Kael remained close but unassuming, a shadow that flitted through Rian's periphery. He listened to conversations, noted habits, and made mental notes of weaknesses. Rian's pride, his subtle sensitivity to criticism, the way he laughed when flattered. Kael filed it all away, each observation a stepping stone in the path he had mapped so meticulously. Yet, in stolen moments, Kael caught himself staring longer than necessary. The warmth of Rian's smile, the careless toss of dark hair, the ease with which he commanded a room, it was infuriating. Kael felt the strange, unwelcome pull of attraction. He clenched his fists in his pockets, willing himself to suppress it. This isn't about desire. It's about revenge. Nothing else. By the time the gala drew to a close, Kael had maneuvered himself into Rian's orbit. He had laughed at the right moments, offered charmingly measured compliments, and left the subtle impression of familiarity. The groundwork was laid. Soon he would be indispensable and the game would truly begin. But as Kael left the room, his mind raced, not with strategies, but with thoughts he hated admitting. How would it feel to be near Rian not as a schemer but as someone who belonged? Could he ever reconcile the warmth he felt when Rian smiled with the icy calculation that had brought him here? He shook his head, dispelling the dangerous thought. The path was clear. Revenge first. Everything else, everything, was secondary. Outside, the night was quiet, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. Kael inhaled deeply, the cool air filling his lungs, steadying his nerves. Tomorrow he would begin the next stage. Proximity, trust, subtle manipulation. And Rian, brilliant, unaware, would step unwittingly into the web Kael had so carefully spun. Kael's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. War had never been so intoxicating. And perhaps, unknowingly, so dangerously close to something he might never admit, even to himself. Kael had always been good at slipping into people's lives, but with Rian it felt different, almost too easy. Within a week of the gala, Kael had maneuvered himself into Rian's inner circle. A carefully timed message here, a casual encounter there, a few pointed remarks that flattered without seeming desperate, and suddenly Rian was the one inviting him to coffee, to gallery openings, to late-night rooftop drinks under the stars. This was supposed to be thrilling, Kael reminded himself. This was victory. And yet, every time Rian's dark eyes softened with genuine warmth, Kael's chest twisted with something he refused to name. "You're surprisingly fun to be around," Rian said one evening as they sat outside a quiet cafe, warm lamplight washing over their table. "I don't usually keep new people this close." Kael smirked, swirling the coffee cup between his hands. "Is that your way of saying I should be honored?" Rian chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just my way of saying I find you interesting." Interesting. The word sent a strange shiver down Kael's spine. This was exactly what he wanted, Rian's attention, his trust. But it felt almost too intimate. Too real. "You're an enigma," Rian continued, his tone softer now. "You seem so put together, so precise. But there's something behind your eyes, like you're carrying a secret no one else knows." Kael froze for a fraction of a second before recovering with a practiced smile. "Maybe I am. Wouldn't it be boring otherwise?" Rian tilted his head, watching him for a moment that felt too long, too dangerous. "I think I want to find out what it is." Kael's fingers tightened on the cup. Good, he told himself. Let him try. Let him fall deeper. The harder he falls, the more it will hurt when I pull it all away. And yet, part of him almost wished Rian wouldn't look too closely. Over the next several weeks, Kael found himself caught in a strange rhythm. Days filled with careful manipulation, subtle comments designed to steer Rian's choices, small favors that made Kael seem indispensable, and nights filled with restless thoughts that left him staring at the ceiling. He started noticing things about Rian he hadn't anticipated. The way he tapped his fingers when he was thinking. The low hum in his throat when a song he liked came on the radio. The tired look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. These were weaknesses he could exploit, yes, but instead of satisfaction, Kael felt a pang of something dangerously close to empathy. One night, Kael joined Rian at a quiet bar tucked away in the city's backstreets. It was late, the place almost empty, just the two of them and a soft jazz track playing in the background. Rian sat across from him, uncharacteristically quiet, his usual confident smirk replaced by a faraway look. "You seem off tonight," Kael said finally, careful to keep his tone casual. Rian gave a small, humorless laugh. "Just thinking. Sometimes it feels like I have to keep performing, you know? Like if I ever stop being the perfect version of myself, everyone will lose interest." Kael blinked, momentarily thrown. He hadn't expected honesty. Vulnerability maybe, but not this quiet confession. "You think you have to be perfect?" Kael asked softly. Rian glanced at him, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Don't you? Kael hesitated. For once he didn't know what to say. Because wasn't that exactly what he was doing? Crafting a perfect persona, a flawless mask designed to lure Rian in? I think, Kael began slowly, maybe perfection isn't as interesting as you think it is. Rian chuckled. Maybe you're right. But I'm not sure I know how to stop trying. Kael looked at him for a long moment, something heavy pressing against his chest. This was supposed to be the moment he tightened the strings, used Rian's vulnerability against him. Instead he found himself saying, then maybe you just need someone who won't leave when you do. The words hung between them raw and unguarded. Kael cursed himself silently. This wasn't part of the plan. But Rian's expression softened, and for a moment, Kael forgot why he was even here. Later that night, Kael lay awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling. The revenge plan was still there, still sharp in his mind, but it felt blurred. What was he doing? He'd wanted Rian to trust him, to open up, so that breaking him would be all the more satisfying. And yet, when he saw Rian's rare vulnerability, Kael didn't feel triumphant. He felt protective. That scared him more than anything. The next day Eli called. You're going soft, Eli said bluntly after Kael explained what had happened. Kael frowned. I'm not. Yes, you are. You were supposed to be taking notes, not holding his hand while he cries about being perfect. He didn't cry. You know what I mean. Eli sighed. Look, Kael, we agreed, this is revenge. You can't let yourself get caught up in whatever thing is happening between you two. Kael pinched the bridge of his nose. I know. I just what? Kael hesitated. He couldn't say it. Couldn't say that sometimes when Rian smiled at him like he meant it, Kael felt like he wasn't plotting anything at all. Nothing, Kael said finally. I'm fine. I know what I'm doing. But even as he hung up the call, Kael knew that was a lie. A few nights later, Kael and Rian found themselves on Rian's apartment balcony, city lights twinkling below like stars. Tell me something real, Rian said suddenly, turning to face him. Kael's breath caught. Real? Yes. Not charming, not clever. Real. Kael swallowed hard. This is dangerous. I hate the sound of my own laugh, Kael said finally, surprising even himself. Rian raised an eyebrow. Why? It sounds fake to me. Like I'm always performing even when I'm not trying to. Rian studied him for a long moment, then smiled softly. It doesn't sound fake to me. And there it was again, the twist in Kael's chest, the warmth he couldn't ignore. When Kael left that night, he told himself it was just part of the act. But deep down he knew the truth. The line between act and reality was starting to vanish. And if he wasn't careful, this game he'd started would end up consuming him completely. Kael had always prided himself on control. Every step of his plan had been meticulous, deliberate, like pieces on a chessboard. But now, for the first time, he felt the game slipping out of his hands. It started with a rumor. Did you hear? Eli's voice came through the phone, sharp and laced with concern. Someone's asking questions about you, about why you suddenly popped up in Rian's life. Kael's stomach tightened. Who? I don't know yet. But you need to be careful. If Rian finds out what you're really doing. Kael didn't need Eli to finish the sentence. If Rian discovered the truth now, everything would collapse. The revenge, the months of planning, and whatever fragile thing was forming between them. Keep digging, Kael said tightly before ending the call. That night, Kael was at Rian's apartment again. He hadn't planned to come over, but Rian had texted him. Come over, I need to get out of my head, and Kael couldn't say no. The air inside was warm, the scent of coffee and something faintly citrus filling the room. Rian was sitting cross-legged on the couch, his hair messy, wearing a loose gray sweater that looked far too soft for Kael to handle. You okay? Kael asked, keeping his tone light. Rian gave a small smile. Just a long day. Stay. Kael nodded and sank onto the couch beside him. It was supposed to be a casual night. Movies, takeout, maybe a few drinks, but the atmosphere was different. He could feel it in the way Rian's knee brushed his, in the quiet weight of his gaze when Kael wasn't looking. Halfway through the film, Kael realized he hadn't heard a word of the dialogue. His attention was fixed entirely on Rian, the way he leaned forward slightly, how the glow from the screen traced over his sharp jawline. And then, without warning, Rian spoke. Sometimes I feel like I don't know you at all, he said softly. Kael's chest went tight. What do you mean? You're always here, Rian continued, eyes fixed on him. You make me laugh, you listen, you fit. But sometimes it feels like there's a wall between us. Like you're hiding behind something. Kael's throat felt dry. He could lie, he always did, but the words wouldn't come. Rian's voice dropped, quiet but piercing. What are you hiding from me, Kael? For a moment, Kael almost told him everything. The plan. The anger. The carefully constructed web of lies. He could confess right here, let it all out, let the chips fall where they may. But then he saw the softness in Rian's eyes, the vulnerability he so rarely showed anyone. If Kael told him now, it would shatter him. And Kael wasn't ready, not to hurt him, not to lose him. Instead, Kael smiled faintly, forcing his voice steady. Maybe I'm just not as interesting as you think I am. Rian studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly as if letting it go, for now. But Kael could feel the tension lingering in the air like static. Later that night, Rian fell asleep on the couch, head tilted back, hair falling into his face. Kael sat there, unmoving, watching him. This was supposed to be the moment Kael felt triumphant. Rian trusted him enough to fall asleep beside him. The trap was closing just as Kael had planned. But instead of satisfaction, Kael felt a hollow ache. He reached out and without thinking brushed a strand of hair from Rian's face. His fingers lingered for a moment, dangerously gentle. Why do you have to make this so hard? Kael whispered, barely audible. Rian stirred slightly but didn't wake. Kael's hand dropped as if burned. The next day, everything threatened to come undone. Kael was at a gallery event with Rian when Eli showed up unannounced, his expression grim. Can we talk? Eli hissed, pulling Kael aside. This isn't a good time. It's urgent. Someone's been digging into your past. They know about the gallery incident. If Rian hears about it from anyone but you, you're finished. Kael's pulse thundered in his ears. You have to make a choice, Eli said. Either end this now and walk away before it blows up, or tell him the truth yourself. But you can't keep this charade going much longer. Kael's gaze flicked back to where Rian stood, chatting with a small group, the picture of ease and grace. The plan had been simple. Get close, make him fall, then destroy him the way he'd once destroyed Kael. But now, standing there with Eli's warning echoing in his ears, Kael realized he didn't want to destroy him anymore. He wanted him. That night, Kael showed up at Rian's apartment again, this time uninvited. You're early, Rian said, surprised but smiling as he let Kael in. I needed to see you, Kael said, his voice rougher than he intended. Something in his tone made Rian pause. What's wrong? Kael opened his mouth, ready to tell him everything, but the words caught in his throat. The truth was there, burning on his tongue, but so was the fear of losing this, losing him. Instead of speaking, Kael stepped closer. Rian's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't move away. Kael? And then Kael kissed him. It wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't calculated or measured. It was raw, desperate, full of all the confusion and longing Kael had been holding back for weeks. When he finally pulled back, breathless, Rian was staring at him, stunned. What was that? Rian asked quietly. Kael swallowed hard. Something I shouldn't want. For a moment, silence stretched between them, electric and heavy. Then, slowly, Rian smiled. Then maybe I want it too. Kael's chest tightened painfully. This was it, the line crossed, the point of no return. He was no longer just plotting against Rian. He was falling for him. That night, lying in Rian's bed, Kael stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. Tomorrow the truth would come out. It was inevitable. But for now, just for tonight, he let himself believe that this was real. Kael woke before dawn, the faint light of the city filtering through Rian's curtains. Rian was still asleep, one arm draped lazily across Kael's waist, his hair falling across his forehead. For a moment, Kael allowed himself to breathe it in, the quiet, the warmth, the illusion that nothing was wrong. But the moment shattered as soon as his phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Eli. They know. The text was short, sharp, final. Someone told Rian's manager about the gallery night. It's only a matter of time before he hears everything. Kael's heart lurched. He slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Rian, and stood in the bathroom staring at his own reflection. His plan, his careful, flawless plan, had run out of time. Today Rian would learn the truth. By afternoon, Kael could feel the tension in the air like a storm building. Rian was quieter than usual, distracted, his phone buzzing with messages he didn't bother to hide. Then, just as Kael was about to leave for the evening, Rian spoke. Stay, he said simply. Kael turned back slowly. Rian. Rian's expression was unreadable, his dark eyes locked on Kael. I heard something today. Kael's stomach dropped. Someone said you've been planning this. Us, from the beginning? Rian's voice was calm, too calm. That you came into my life because of some stupid revenge plot over something I don't even remember doing. Kael's throat closed. Tell me they're lying, Rian said, stepping closer. Tell me this isn't what I think it is. Kael opened his mouth but no sound came out. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Rian's jaw tightened, his voice dropping to a whisper. You really did, didn't you? Kael's hands curled into fists at his sides. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said finally, his voice breaking. I hated you. I wanted you to feel what I felt that night at the gallery. But then what? Rian snapped, hurt flashing in his eyes. You decided you liked me after all? That I was worth keeping instead of destroying? Kael flinched. You think I haven't noticed? Rian's voice was rising now, sharp and cutting. You show up everywhere, you say all the right things, but you never really let me in. And I let you close anyway. Kael stepped forward. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean to fall for you. Rian laughed bitterly. Fall for me? That's rich, Kael. You built this entire relationship on a lie. Kael's chest ached, but he forced himself to meet Rian's gaze. Yes. But somewhere along the way, the lie became the only thing I wanted to keep real. Rian stared at him, breathing hard, torn between anger and something else. Something Kael couldn't read. You should go, Rian said finally, his voice hoarse. Kael didn't move. Rian. Go, Rian repeated, louder this time, and Kael felt the words like a blow. Outside, the night was cold, the rain just beginning to fall. Kael stood under the awning, heart pounding, drenched in confusion and regret. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. For 3 days Kael heard nothing. No calls, no texts. And then, just as he was beginning to wonder if he should leave the city entirely, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Meet me at the pier. Midnight. Kael didn't need to ask who it was. The pier was deserted when he arrived, the moonlight casting silver ripples across the water. Rian stood at the edge, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, his expression unreadable. You came, Rian said quietly. You asked me to. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the sound of waves. I don't know if I hate you or if Rian trailed off, shaking his head. You ruined everything, Kael. But when you weren't there, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Kael's chest tightened. I didn't come here to beg you to forgive me, he said carefully. I just needed you to know that every moment with you, even when it started as a lie, became the most real thing I've ever had. Rian turned to face him fully now, eyes dark and shining. And if I told you I still don't know whether to walk away or pull you closer? Kael took a slow step forward, his breath visible in the cool night air. Then I'd tell you I'll stay right here until you decide. For a moment, neither of them moved. And then, somewhere behind them, footsteps echoed on the wooden pier. Kael froze, turning toward the sound. A figure was approaching, tall, shadowed, face hidden beneath the glow of the pier lights. Kael Arden, the stranger said, voice cold and cutting. We need to talk. Now. Rian's brows knit in confusion. Who is that? Kael's blood ran cold. He knew that voice, knew exactly what this meant. The past he thought he had buried had just arrived, and it wasn't done with him yet. And as the stranger stepped into the light, Kael realized this was no longer just about revenge. This was about survival.